Adrian Vale came to Chicago O'Hare to meet the woman he was supposed to marry. Instead, he saw the woman he had abandoned 8 months earlier standing beneath the cold terminal lights, bruised, terrified, and 7 months pregnant. And the moment Emily Carter looked at him, Adrian understood something was terribly wrong. She did not smile. She did not run into his arms. She looked at him like he might be another man she needed to escape. Around them, travelers hurried toward ordinary lives while Adrian's carefully controlled world began to collapse. A billion-dollar marriage waited at the gate. His past stood 20 yards away carrying a child that might be his. But this is not only a story about lost love. It is about betrayal power and what a man is willing to sacrifice when the person he once failed becomes the only person who knows who is coming for him. Stay with this story until the end. And before we begin, like the video and tell me in the comments what city or country you are watching from. Adrian Vale had spent most of his life learning how to keep his face still. Men had pointed guns at him and watched for fear. Prosecutors had placed photographs on polished tables and waited for panic. Rivals had threatened his businesses, his family name, his freedom. None of them had ever seen him lose control. But standing beneath the white airport lights with Emily Carter, 7 months pregnant, in front of him, Adrian felt something inside his chest tighten so violently that for 1 second he forgot how to breathe. Jonah Price appeared beside him. The man they had spotted near the coffee shop was gone. Jonah spoke quietly. He knew we saw him. Adrian did not take his eyes off Emily. Who was he? Jonah hesitated. Emily already seemed to know the answer. One of ours, Jonah said. Adrian finally looked at him. What crew, South Side? Emily closed her eyes. Adrian saw the fear move across her face again. Not surprise. Recognition. That mattered. His voice lowered. You knew. Emily looked at him. I knew enough. Then tell me. Not here. Adrian glanced around the terminal. Thousands of strangers moved past them. Families hugging, businessmen staring at phones, children dragging backpacks across polished tile. An old couple argued over a boarding pass. Normal life continued 10 feet away while Adrian realized someone inside his organization might have been hunting the mother of his child. His phone vibrated. Madeline Sterling. He ignored it. Emily noticed the name. Her expression changed. So she landed. Adrian slipped the phone back into his coat. Emily gave a small laugh that held no humor. You really did pick the perfect day for this. This is not about Madeline. No. Her eyes dropped to her suitcase. It was never about me either. Adrian felt the sentence land exactly where she intended. Jonah stepped closer. We need to move. Adrian nodded. Emily immediately shook her head. I am getting on my flight. No. Her eyes flashed. You do not get to say no. If Kane has men watching the airport, getting on a commercial plane is not an escape. I know how to disappear. You were followed into O'Hare. I still made it here. And if I had arrived 5 minutes later... She went silent. Adrian stepped closer, careful not to touch her. Emily had flinched when he caught her wrist. He had not forgotten. Neither had she. His voice softened. Come with me. She stared at him as if the words themselves were dangerous. I did that once. Adrian did not defend himself. Jonah looked toward the far end of the terminal. Security is changing positions. Adrian held Emily's gaze. Whatever happened to you, we cannot solve it standing in the middle of an airport. I am not asking you to solve anything. No. He glanced at her stomach. But I am involved now. Her jaw tightened. You were involved 8 months ago. Adrian had no answer good enough for that. Emily looked toward the security checkpoint one last time, then down at her suitcase. Finally, she whispered, 1 car. Adrian frowned. What? I go with you in 1 car. No convoy, no parade, no taking me back to your penthouse. Fine. And I keep my phone. If it is compromised, Jonah destroys it. Adrian, if Kane is tracking it, your preference does not matter. Her eyes hardened. There he is. Adrian went still, the man who decides what everyone else is allowed to choose. Jonah looked away. Adrian took the blow without reacting. Then he said, Keep the phone until Jonah checks it. Emily stared at him for another second. Fine. They left the terminal through a private exit. Outside, freezing rain had turned the morning gray. Chicago in January could make even expensive things look cold. Black cars idled under the concrete overhang. Adrian normally traveled with several vehicles. Today, he sent all but one away. Emily noticed. She noticed everything. That had always been part of what drew him to her. She watched rooms the way other people watched faces. She remembered numbers after seeing them once. She could hear 3 sentences in a conversation and understand the 4th before it was spoken. Adrian opened the rear passenger door. Emily stopped. "I can do that myself." He stepped back. She climbed in. Jonah took the front passenger seat. Adrian sat beside her. The doors locked. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Rain moved across the tinted windows. The airport slid away behind them. Adrian looked at Emily. She had lost weight, too much. Her fingers were thinner. There was a fading bruise under one eye, mostly hidden with makeup. Another yellowed mark disappeared beneath the collar of her coat. His gaze lowered. Her left hand rested over her stomach. Protective, automatic. Adrian had seen soldiers hold wounds that way. Emily caught him looking. "Stop." His eyes returned to her face. "Stop what, looking at me like that?" "Like what?" "Like you are counting everything that is wrong." Adrian said nothing. She turned toward the window. His phone vibrated again. Madeline, then his attorney, then Bennett Ross. Adrian looked at Bennett's name on the screen longer than the others. Emily noticed that too. "Do not answer him." Adrian looked at her. "You said the man closest to me betrayed me." "Yes, you meant Bennett." Emily did not respond. That was enough. Adrian answered the call. "Bennett." His second-in-command sounded calm. "Everything all right at the airport?" Adrian looked at Emily. She stared back at him. "Change of schedule," Adrian said. "I heard you left before Sterling came through the gate. News traveled fast. It always had." Adrian leaned back against the seat. "Handle her people. Already doing it. Good." Bennett paused. "Is there a problem?" Adrian watched Emily's face. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "No problem. Where are you headed?" Adrian almost smiled. Bennett had never needed to ask that before. For 7 years, Bennett Ross had known where Adrian was without asking. He knew because he was part of the structure that moved around him. The routes, the drivers, the guards, the safe houses, the meetings. Adrian answered. "Downtown." There was half a second of silence. Then Bennett said, "I will meet you there." "No." Another pause. Adrian continued, "Stay at the office." "Of course." The call ended. Emily reached slowly into her coat. Jonah turned immediately. She froze. "It is paper." Adrian nodded. Jonah relaxed slightly. Emily pulled out a folded boarding receipt and a pen from her bag. She wrote something, then handed it to Adrian. "He is lying." Adrian looked at her. She wrote again. "Kane has a private office in West Loop." Then beneath it a phone number. Adrian gave the paper to Jonah. "Check it." Jonah took out a secure device. Adrian turned back to Emily. "How do you know that number? I memorized it." "From where Kane's house." Adrian heard the word but did not understand it at first. "His house." Emily looked out the window. "Yes." The car moved onto the expressway. Steel and glass rose in the distance. Chicago appeared through rain like a city underwater. Adrian's voice became quieter. "How long were you there?" Emily did not answer. He waited. She finally said, 7 months. Something in the car changed. Jonah stopped typing. Adrian looked at her. "You worked for him 7 months?" Emily turned. "No." Her voice was almost flat. "He kept me for 7 months." The words settled between them. Adrian felt his hands close. He did not realize he had made fists until his nails pressed into his palms. Emily saw. Do not what do that thing where you get quiet and decide somebody is going to die." Adrian held her gaze. "Who hurt you?" She laughed softly. It was a terrible sound. "You still think there was one person?" He looked toward the bruising near her wrist. Emily pulled her sleeve lower. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Tell me what happened. Not in the car. Emily, not in the car." There was something in her tone that ended the discussion. Adrian looked away. His phone rang again. "Madeline." This time he answered. She spoke first. "You left." "Yes, I noticed." Madeline Sterling never raised her voice. She did not need to. Her family controlled ports, warehouses, freight routes, political relationships, and enough money to buy silence in more than one state. She had been raised around men who confused volume with power. She had never made that mistake. Adrian said there was an emergency. Was. A pause. Does it have a name? Adrian looked at Emily. Emily stared through the window as if she had not heard. Emily Carter. Another pause. Longer this time. Madeline knew the name. Of course she did. Before a woman agreed to marry Adrian Vale, people were paid to learn what mattered to him. Madeline said, I see. No, you do not. That is probably true. Her tone remained cool. My father is waiting in a conference room with 3 attorneys and 2 bankers. I will deal with your father. You were supposed to deal with him this morning. Adrian lowered his voice. I cannot be there. Madeline was quiet. Then she asked, Is she in danger? Emily's eyes shifted toward him. Adrian answered, Yes. Madeline did not ask whether he still loved her. She did not ask whether the child was his. Not yet. Instead, she said, Then handle the emergency. Adrian frowned slightly. That is all no. Her voice sharpened. That is what I am willing to say while you are sitting beside her. Then the call ended. Emily looked at him. You told her my name, she asked. You could have lied. I do not lie when the truth will reach someone in 10 minutes anyway. Emily looked back out the window. That sounds almost noble. It was not meant to. No, nothing with you ever is. The car left the highway and entered River North. Adrian told the driver to keep going, not his penthouse, not the Vale offices. He directed them toward a residential tower near the lake. The apartment was owned through 3 holding companies and used only when necessary. Bennett knew of 2 safe residences. He did not know this one, or Adrian had once believed he did not. That belief now felt less reliable. They entered through a private garage. Emily refused help getting out of the vehicle. She carried her own bag. Inside the elevator, she leaned against the wall. For 1 second, her face tightened. Adrian noticed. Pain, I am fine. That was not the question. It is the answer you are getting. The elevator opened. Jonah entered first. He checked the apartment, then nodded. Adrian allowed Emily inside. The place was quiet, expensive, impersonal. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the lake. The sky was the color of steel. Emily stood in the middle of the living room. You still buy places that look like nobody lives in them. Adrian removed his coat. Nobody does live here. That explains it. She tried to take off her coat and winced. Adrian moved toward her. She stepped back. He stopped immediately. Emily closed her eyes. Sorry, you do not have to apologize. Her eyes opened. You really should stop saying things that make you sound different. Adrian absorbed that too. Jonah returned from the kitchen. Doctor is 10 minutes out. Emily looked at Adrian. I did not ask for a doctor, no. Her expression hardened. Adrian continued. But you are 7 months pregnant, injured, and you just tried to board a plane after being held for 7 months. I have been seeing a doctor, whose doctor Emily hesitated. Kane's. Adrian's face went still. Emily looked away. The doctor arrived 12 minutes later. Dr. Susan Hart had worked with Adrian's family for years. She did not ask questions she did not need answered. Adrian waited in the hallway while she examined Emily in the bedroom. He hated the closed door. He hated not knowing what was happening behind it. He hated that the last time Emily had needed help, he had been nowhere near her. Jonah stood at the window. You believe her about Bennett. Adrian did not look at him. I believe she believes it. That is not the same thing. No. Jonah turned. Bennett has been with us 7 years. Adrian looked toward the bedroom door. So has Emily. Not like Bennett. Adrian's eyes shifted toward him. Jonah understood his mistake. He said nothing else. The bedroom door opened. Dr. Hart stepped out. Adrian approached. Well, she is dehydrated, exhausted. She has at least 2 healed or partially healed rib fractures. Several bruises are recent. Adrian's expression did not change. What about the baby? Heart rate is good. Movement is good. I do not see signs of immediate distress. Immediate. The word stayed with him. Dr. Hart continued. She needs rest, food, hydration, and as little stress as possible. Adrian glanced around the apartment. Stress was currently the only thing he could guarantee. Can she travel? The doctor frowned. I would strongly prefer she did not. Emily appeared in the doorway. I am standing right here. Dr. Hart looked at her. I know. Emily folded her arms. I am not a patient people discuss in hallways. Dr. Hart gave Adrian a pointed look. I agree. Adrian nodded once. The doctor left soon after. Emily moved slowly into the living room. Adrian poured water. She took it without argument. That worried him more than if she had refused. She sat on the couch. He remained standing. 7 months, he said. Emily looked at the glass in her hands. Yes. How? She did not answer. Adrian sat across from her. You disappeared after I ended things. I left, I know. For 3 weeks. We're Milwaukee first, then Madison. Why did you come back? Her mouth tightened. Because people still need jobs after their lives fall apart. Adrian looked down for a moment. Emily continued. I found an accounting firm, private clients, mostly freight companies and logistics businesses. When did you know Kane owned them? I did not. When did he find out who you were? About a month after I started. Adrian leaned forward, and the pregnancy, Emily looked at him. He knew before I did. Adrian went still. How he had someone follow me to a clinic. Adrian's anger sharpened. Emily watched him. I took a test because I was sick every morning. I thought it was stress. Her eyes lowered to her stomach. I was wrong. Adrian's voice came out rougher than he intended. Why did you not call me? She looked at him as if he had asked something absurd. You told me I had no place in your life. That was before I knew. You made sure there was no after. He had no defense. Emily looked down at the water again. I was going to tell you eventually. What changed, Kane? The name filled the room. Emily continued. He started asking questions. Not about my work, about you. What kind of questions? Where we met, how long we were together, whether you ever talked business around me, whether you ever gave me access to your properties. Adrian's face hardened. And you answered I lied. A faint edge entered her voice. I told him I hated you. Adrian held her gaze. Did he believe you at first? What changed? Emily placed a hand over her stomach. This. Adrian understood. Kane had not seen an ex-girlfriend. He had seen leverage. Emily continued. He said a woman carrying Adrian Vale's child was worth more than any file on a server. Adrian looked away. The city below seemed suddenly too small. He remembered the night he ended their relationship. Emily barefoot in his kitchen, her hair loose over one shoulder, a folder on the counter between them, the Sterling proposal inside it. She had asked him what was wrong. Adrian had already known Kane's people were asking questions about her. He had believed he could solve it the way he solved everything, remove the weakness, close the door, create distance. He had told himself cruelty would keep her alive. Instead, it had left her alone. Emily watched him. You are thinking about that night. Yes. You were cruel, I know. No. Her voice sharpened. You remember being cruel. That is different. Adrian looked at her. She continued. You told me 3 years meant nothing. You told me I had misunderstood what I was to you. I lied. The admission came quietly. Emily stared at him. He had never said it before. I lied because Kane had started asking about you. Emily did not move. Adrian continued. The Sterling proposal arrived the same week. A public alliance. A marriage. I thought if everyone believed you no longer mattered, you would become useless as leverage. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed once, softly, painfully. You thought humiliating me would protect me. Yes. And did it? Adrian looked at the bruises on her arms. No. Silence. Emily turned toward the windows. Rain streaked the glass. Adrian could see her reflection. Tired, pregnant, still refusing to break in front of him. He said, Tell me about Bennett. Emily's face changed. The emotion vanished behind focus. This was safer for her. Facts were safer. She placed the glass down. I saw his name 4 months ago. Where in a set of transfer records. Could have been planted, I thought that too. Adrian said nothing. Emily continued. So I looked again. How Kane started using me to clean financial records. Adrian's eyes narrowed. He let you into his systems. He thought I was scared enough to stop fighting. Was he wrong? Emily looked directly at him. Yes. A trace of the woman he remembered appeared then, sharp, defiant, very much alive. I found repeated payments tied to Bennett, shell companies, offshore accounts, meeting logs. Adrian shook his head slowly. He has access to my money already. Not this money. What was it for? Emily hesitated, then said, You. Adrian's face became still. She continued, Kane is not planning to attack the organization from outside. What is he planning to replace you? Adrian leaned back. With Bennett. Yes, that makes no sense. It makes perfect sense if Bennett controls the transition. Adrian's voice cooled. Explain. Emily looked at him. The Sterling engagement event is in 11 days. Adrian did not ask how she knew. If Kane had Bennett, Kane knew everything. Emily continued. Your senior captains will be there, Sterling executives, political intermediaries. Security will be concentrated in one place. Adrian's expression changed by almost nothing. Emily noticed anyway. Kane plans to hit it. How, I do not know the final method. Bomb, I do not know. Shooter, I do not know. Adrian stood. Emily raised her voice. Sit down. He looked at her. You are pacing like that changes the facts. Adrian remained standing. Emily continued. The important part is Bennett survives. Adrian's eyes narrowed. He steps in. Yes, Kane controls him. Emily shook her head. I'm not sure. That caught Adrian's attention. What does that mean? I think Bennett believes he will control Kane. For the first time, something almost like disbelief crossed Adrian's face. Emily continued. They are both planning for the other man to be temporary. Adrian turned toward the window. 7 years. Bennett had sat across from him through negotiations, funerals, indictments, territory, disputes, family crises. He had carried Adrian's secrets. He knew which men were loyal, which men were afraid, which men could be bought. Adrian had trusted him because betrayal from Bennett had seemed irrational. Emily spoke behind him. That is why he was the right person. Adrian looked back. She met his eyes. You do not guard the door against the man you already invited inside. His phone vibrated. Bennett again. Adrian looked at the screen. Emily reached for the boarding receipt and pen. She wrote quickly. Ask where he is. Adrian answered. Bennett, Sterling's situation is getting worse. I know. Madeline left the airport. Adrian looked at Emily. Where are you? A pause. At the office. Emily immediately wrote another line. He is lying. Adrian kept his voice neutral. Stay there. Of course. The call ended. Jonah entered from the kitchen with the secure device in his hand. His expression had changed. Adrian looked at him. What? Jonah held out the screen. The number Emily gave me is active. And Jonah glanced toward her. The private line in Kane's West Loop building received an outgoing call 6 minutes ago. Adrian's eyes hardened. Jonah continued. The call was routed through Bennett's encrypted phone. The room became completely silent. Emily did not look pleased. There was no satisfaction in being right, only exhaustion. Adrian stared at the screen for several seconds. Then he turned to Emily. Start from the beginning. Emily looked at Adrian for a long moment. There was no anger in his voice now. That made it worse. Anger would have been familiar. Anger was something she knew how to survive. This was different. This was Adrian trying to understand how 7 months of her life had disappeared while he continued building an empire that no longer included her. Emily folded her hands over her stomach. When Kane realized who I was, he did not lock me up immediately. Adrian remained standing near the window. Jonah stayed by the kitchen counter silent. Emily continued. At first he was polite. Adrian's eyes narrowed. He invited me to dinner, asked questions about work, pretended he was impressed by how quickly I found errors in his accounts. What kind of errors? Missing freight payments, duplicate invoices, money disappearing between subsidiaries. Kane does not lose money by accident. I know. Emily looked at Adrian. That was how I realized the accounting firm was not what it claimed to be. She had been working there for 6 weeks when Silas Kane first invited her to his house. The invitation had sounded harmless. A client meeting, dinner, a chance to discuss a promotion. Emily remembered arriving at a stone estate outside the city and immediately knowing she should have left. There were too many cameras, too many men standing where staff should have been, Too many locked doors inside a house designed to look open. Kane had greeted her personally. He was not the kind of man who needed to raise his voice. That had been the first thing she hated about him. Dangerous men who shouted could be measured. Silas Kane smiled. He asked questions. He listened. He remembered everything. That first evening he poured her wine. Emily did not touch it. Kane noticed. "You do not drink, I have an early morning." He studied her for a moment. Or another reason. Emily felt cold. At that point, only two people knew about the pregnancy, her doctor and Emily herself. She looked at Kane. He smiled. "You should be more careful leaving medical offices." Emily stood. "I think we are done." Kane remained seated. "No." The single word stopped her. Not because it was loud, because two men appeared near the door. Emily looked at them, then at Kane. He folded his hands on the table. "I know who the father is." She did not answer. Kane continued. "I also know Adrian Vale ended your relationship 8 months ago." Emily stared at him. "He has nothing to do with me. Then this should be very easy." Kane leaned back. "Tell me what you know about his organization." Emily laughed. It was instinctive. "Wrong." Kane's smile disappeared. "I do payroll analysis. You lived with him. No, you spent 3 years with him. That does not mean I know anything." Kane looked toward her stomach. People always know more than they think. Emily had left that room 2 hours later, but she had not left the property. By sunrise, her phone was gone. Her car had disappeared. The bedroom door locked from the outside. For the first week, Kane still pretended it was temporary. For her protection. For security. Because Adrian was dangerous. Because someone might follow her. Because she was pregnant and vulnerable. Emily told Adrian this without changing her tone. Adrian's face remained still. Only his hands betrayed him. His fingers curled slowly at his sides. Emily noticed. He wanted me confused first. Adrian said, and when that did not work, he stopped pretending. Silence settled over the room. Emily looked down. "The first time I tried to leave was 2 months later." Adrian's voice dropped. "What happened?" "A delivery truck came early." She could still see it. 4:30 in the morning, snow on the ground. A kitchen worker carrying produce through a rear service entrance. One guard distracted, another smoking outside. The door opened for less than half a minute. Emily had been wearing socks, no coat, no phone. She ran anyway. Across frozen stone, through the service yard, past the gate before anyone understood what was happening. Her feet had gone numb before she reached the road. She could hear engines behind her. She kept running. There had been houses beyond the trees, lights, people, normal people sleeping in warm rooms. She thought if she reached one driveway, one porch, one door, she could survive. The black SUV reached her first. Adrian looked away. Emily continued. "They dragged me back." Jonah's jaw tightened. Kane, no, his men. What did he do? Emily went quiet. Adrian looked at her. "Emily." She rubbed her thumb slowly over the rim of the water glass. "He put me in the basement." Adrian did not move. No windows, no clock. One light. Her voice became quieter. "They brought food at different times, so I could not count days." Adrian's eyes sharpened. "How long? 6 days." Jonah cursed under his breath. Emily kept going. Kane came down once. She remembered the sound of his shoes before she saw him. Measured steps. No hurry. He stood outside the locked room and looked at her through the narrow opening in the door. Emily had been sitting on the floor, cold, exhausted, too angry to show fear. Kane said people stop running when time stops meaning anything. Emily looked at him. She had said nothing. Kane waited, then smiled. "You will learn." He closed the door. Emily returned to the present. He was wrong. Adrian looked at her. Emily continued. "I stopped trying to run." Jonah frowned. "But you escaped." "Eventually." She looked at him. "I stopped trying to run before I had something worth running with." That was when the story changed. Emily realized Kane expected resistance. He understood screaming, defiance, threats. He knew how to punish obvious rebellion. So she stopped giving it to him. She became quiet, useful, predictable. She apologized when she was expected to apologize. She ate when food was placed in front of her. She stopped asking when she could leave. And when Kane asked whether she would help clean discrepancies in his financial records, Emily said yes. Adrian studied her. You made him think you had given up. Yes. Did he believe it eventually? A faint smile touched Emily's mouth. Men like Kane confuse obedience with surrender. Adrian said nothing. The irony was not lost on either of them. Emily continued. At first, Kane only gave her printed documents. She corrected numbers, found hidden losses, identified people stealing from him. She hated helping him. But each page told her something. Names, companies, routes, payments. Then came limited computer access. Always supervised, always monitored. Emily learned to work slowly. Never too curious, never too efficient. She made mistakes on purpose, asked harmless questions, complained about passwords, pretended fatigue, and she memorized everything. Adrian asked everything I could. She tapped one finger against her temple. Door codes, security rotations, names, meeting times, accounts, which guard drank, which one gambled, which one called his wife every night at 9. Jonah looked at her differently now. Not like a wounded woman, like an operator. Emily noticed. I was bored. Jonah almost smiled. She continued. Kane had a server room on the lower level. Most financial backups passed through it. Adrian leaned forward. You saw it twice. How one of his technicians needed help tracing a reporting error. You memorized the room. Emily looked at him. I memorized the building. Adrian's eyes narrowed. All of it. As much as I could see, stairwells, access panels, camera positions, service doors, elevator codes, the blind spot near the laundry corridor, the guard station outside Kane's office, the basement hallway where she had once been locked alone. Emily had repeated the layout every night before sleeping, floor by floor, room by room. She was afraid trauma would erase details, so she turned memory into routine. Adrian asked, When did you find Bennett 4 months ago? She leaned forward. Kane gave me access to a group of holding accounts. I found transfers moving through 3 shell companies. To Bennett, not directly. She looked at Jonah. Whoever built the structure knew what they were doing. Jonah said Bennett would. Emily nodded. The first payment looked meaningless. Then I found another, then another. Adrian asked how much enough to buy loyalty. How much? Almost $6 million over 18 months. Jonah went still. Adrian's face showed nothing. Emily continued. Then I found meeting logs. Kane and Bennett. Yes, how often? More than a dozen times. Adrian looked toward the floor. Emily watched him absorb it. 7 years of trust reduced to dates and account numbers. But she was not finished. I found something else. Adrian looked up. A succession file. His eyes hardened. Emily continued. It listed your senior captains. Who would resist Bennett? Who could be bought? Who would need to be removed? Jonah asked, removed, how Emily looked at him. You know how. The apartment became silent. Adrian stepped away from the window. Where are these files? Emily did not answer immediately. Emily, I copied them. Jonah stared at her. How slowly. Adrian came closer. Where are the copies? One is gone. What does that mean? Kane found out I was taking something? Adrian's expression changed. Emily continued before he could ask. I made 3 drives. Jonah said 3-1 stayed in the house. Where? Inside an electrical outlet in a guest room? Adrian asked. Second, Emily looked down. The doctor. Adrian frowned. What doctor? The one Kane brought in to check the baby. You gave him a drive? No. Emily shook her head. I hid it inside the lining of his medical bag. Jonah stared at her. Without him knowing, yes. Adrian asked, Where is he now? I do not know. And the third drive, Emily went silent. Her hand moved over her stomach. Adrian understood before she spoke. That is the one Kane wanted, yes. The room seemed smaller. Emily's breathing changed. Adrian noticed. He lowered his voice. You do not have to tell me. She looked at him. Yes, I do. The memory came back in pieces. Kane's study, rain hitting the windows, the empty slot in the server console, Kane standing behind his desk, the third drive hidden inside the seam of Emily's coat. He already knew files were missing. He did not know how many, Kane asked once. Where is it? Emily lied. I do not know. Kane came around the desk. Wrong answer. I did not take anything. He struck her. The edge of the desk caught her ribs. Pain exploded through her side. She remembered falling, one hand reaching for the floor, the other covering her stomach. Kane crouched. He took a pistol from inside his jacket, pressed the barrel against the side of her belly. Emily had stopped breathing. Kane whispered, "Tell me where the drive is." She looked at him. Every instinct screamed to speak, to give him anything, everything, anything that moved the gun away from her daughter. But Emily knew the drive contained the only proof that Bennett was inside Adrian's organization. The only proof that Kane had been planning something larger. The only thing that might keep her alive long enough to escape. She whispered, "I destroyed it." Kane studied her face. "You are lying." Emily said nothing. He pressed the gun harder. Her entire body shook. Kane smiled. "You should be more frightened." "I am." That answer had surprised him. Emily looked directly at him. "I'm just more afraid of what happens if you win." For 1 second, Kane's face changed. Then he stood. 2 guards dragged Emily away. Back in the apartment, Adrian had not moved. Neither had Jonah. Emily stared at the floor. Kane never found the third drive. Adrian's voice was almost a whisper. "Where is it?" Emily looked up. "I mailed it." "To who? No one." Adrian frowned. Emily continued. "I put it inside a package addressed to a storage facility I rented under a false name." Jonah asked, "You had access to mail once. How the doctor's assistant left a stack of outgoing medical envelopes near the entry table." Emily looked at Adrian. "I switched one." Adrian stared at her. "You did all of that while Kane was watching you?" "No." Emily's voice hardened. "I did it while he thought I was helpless." Adrian looked away. The sentence cut deeper than she intended, or perhaps exactly as deeply as she intended. Jonah broke the silence. "If we have the drive, we have Bennett." Emily shook her head. "No." Adrian looked at her. "What else?" She took a breath. "Kane built an insurance system. What kind, if he dies, disappears, or fails to reset a security sequence, files are automatically released." Jonah's expression changed. "To who? Federal investigators, journalists, prosecutors, rivals." Adrian's face went still. Emily continued. "The package contains Kane's records. That sounds like his problem. It contains yours, too." Silence. Adrian stared at her. "What exactly? I do not know everything. What do you know?" Emily held his gaze. Old transfers, photographs, names, witness statements. 3 killings connected to people in your organization. Jonah looked at Adrian. Emily continued. "Kane built the system so killing him would hurt you more than leaving him alive." Adrian walked slowly toward the window. Outside, rain struck the glass. For years, Silas Kane had survived because he understood one thing better than most criminals. Power did not come from having the biggest weapon. It came from knowing what the other man could not afford to lose. Adrian asked, "Can it be stopped?" "Yes." He turned. Emily continued. "The main server controls the release. We're Kane's property near Joliet." Jonah stepped closer. "You know where the server is?" Emily nodded. "I know the room." Adrian looked at her. How certain Emily met his eyes. "I spent 7 months memorizing how to get out." Before Adrian could respond, the private elevator chimed. Jonah's gun was in his hand instantly. Adrian moved between Emily and the hallway. The elevator doors opened. A woman stepped into the apartment wearing a cream coat, black gloves, and an expression colder than the Chicago rain. Madeline Sterling. 2 security men remained behind her. She looked first at Adrian, then at Emily, then at Emily's stomach. For the first time that day, Madeline Sterling lost control of her face. Only for a second, but Emily saw it. So did Adrian. Madeline removed one glove slowly. "You left me standing at O'Hare." Adrian said, "You should not be here." Madeline's eyes moved back to Emily. "And yet apparently I am not the woman in this room who should be concerned about where she is." Emily stood. Adrian looked at her. "You do not need to. I am tired of sitting." Madeline studied the bruises visible near Emily's wrist. Something in her expression changed. Not jealousy. Calculation, then anger. Madeline looked at Adrian. "Who did this?" Emily answered before he could. "Silas Kane." Madeline's eyes narrowed. Adrian said, "This is bigger than the marriage arrangement." Madeline looked at him. "Our marriage was an arrangement." Her voice was calm. The fact that you disappeared from an airport with another woman who is carrying your child has now made it a public event." Emily looked away. Madeline noticed. She turned toward her. "I am not angry with you." Emily gave a tired smile. "You probably should be." "No." Madeline looked again at the bruising. "If you were trying to steal Adrian from me, I imagine you would have chosen a less complicated entrance. Even Jonah nearly reacted to that. Adrian did not." Madeline continued. "My father believes you humiliated our family. I did." Adrian's answer came without hesitation. Madeline looked at him. "That might be the first useful thing you have said today." She moved toward the table. "Now tell me why Silas Kane is involved." Adrian glanced at Emily. Emily nodded. He told Madeline enough. Not everything. Bennett. The assassination plan. The server, the files. As Adrian spoke, Madeline's anger sharpened into focus. When he finished, she remained silent for several seconds. Then she said, "Sterling Logistics has systems tied into half the freight network Kane uses." Adrian looked at her. Madeline continued, "If he is moving server hardware backup equipment personnel or vehicles through legitimate channels, I can see portions of it." Jonah asked, "You can trace his network, some of it." Madeline looked at Adrian. "I am not doing this for you. I know. I am doing it because Kane planned to use my family's engagement event as a killing ground." Adrian nodded once. Madeline turned toward Emily. "And because I do not like men who point guns at pregnant women." Emily stared at her. For the first time since walking into the apartment, Madeline's expression softened. Only slightly. Then Jonah's secure device beeped. He picked it up. His face changed. Adrian noticed immediately. What? Jonah looked at the screen. "We found another file attached to Bennett's authorization key." Emily stood very still. Jonah opened it. A list of names appeared. Operational personnel, addresses, assignments. One heading, recovery order. Adrian stepped closer. Jonah scrolled, then stopped. Emily's name appeared near the top. Beside it was a priority designation. Adrian's eyes became cold. "What does it say?" Jonah did not answer immediately. "Read it." Jonah looked at Emily, then back at Adrian. "Target is not to be recovered alive if extraction fails." No one moved. Madeline's face hardened. Emily did not look surprised. That frightened Adrian more than anything. Jonah scrolled lower. "There are assigned teams." Adrian said names. Jonah read them. 2 men Adrian barely knew. One he had promoted last year, then the 4th, Lucas Mercer. Emily looked up sharply. Adrian turned toward her. "You know him." Her voice became quiet. "He was at the airport." Jonah stared at the screen. The man who ran Emily nodded. His crew. Adrian looked at the order again. His own authorization structure, his own personnel, his own organization had been turned into a weapon against Emily while he sat at the top believing everything beneath him was still his. Then every light in the apartment went out. Darkness swallowed the room. For half a second, nobody moved. Emergency lights flickered red along the floor. Jonah raised his weapon. Adrian reached for Emily. She stepped back. A camera feed on Jonah's device vanished. Then another. Then another. Jonah whispered 3 cameras down. Madeline's guards moved toward the elevator. A 4th feed disappeared. Then a 5th. Adrian looked toward the front door. Emily's breathing had changed. She knew that silence. She had lived inside it for 7 months. Jonah said, "They found us." A suppressed gunshot punched through the lock. Adrian drew his weapon. Emily reached for the spare gun Jonah offered. Adrian looked at her. No, Emily took it anyway. "I spent 7 months hiding behind locked doors." Another bullet struck the frame. She checked the weapon with steady hands. Not anymore. Another bullet struck the frame. Emily checked the weapon with steady hands. Not anymore. Adrian looked at her for half a second. Then the front door moved inward. Not much. Just enough for the damaged lock to give. Jonah raised 2 fingers. Everyone understood. Madeline moved behind the kitchen wall with one of her guards. Her second man took position near the hallway. Adrian stepped in front of Emily. She immediately shifted to the side. He glanced back. She whispered, "Do not start." Another round punched through the door. Adrian lowered his voice. "Stay behind the wall. That is different. It is still an order." Emily met his eyes. No, it is a suggestion. A sound came from the service corridor. Jonah turned. Second entry. Adrian's expression hardened. They were not trying one door. They knew the layout. That meant this was not random. Someone had given them the building. Adrian looked at Jonah. Maintenance stairs. Jonah nodded. Madeline said, "My car's in the lower garage." "Too obvious. I have 3. Adrian looked at her. She gave him a cold stare. "You thought I came here in one vehicle." For the first time in several minutes, something almost human passed across Adrian's face. Good. The apartment door burst open. Gunfire tore through the living room. Glass exploded from a side table. Jonah returned fire. Adrian grabbed Emily by the upper arm and pulled her toward the service hall. She resisted for one step, then moved. Not because he was stronger, because she understood the difference between control and survival. They reached the maintenance door. Locked. Jonah fired twice behind them. Madeline's guard shouted. Adrian slammed his shoulder into the metal. Nothing. Emily looked at the keypad. Move. Adrian stared at her. Emily, move. She stepped closer. Her fingers flew across the panel. Jonah looked over. "How do you know the code?" "I watched the building manager enter it when we came up." A click. The lock released. Jonah almost smiled. "Of course you did." They entered the stairwell. Madeline followed. Her guards came last. The door slammed shut behind them. Gunfire struck the metal almost immediately. They moved down, fast. Concrete walls, red emergency lights, footsteps above. Emily held the rail with one hand and the pistol with the other. Her breathing grew heavier after the third flight. Adrian noticed. "Slow down." She kept moving. "I am fine. You are not fine. I can still walk." Another burst of gunfire echoed above. Adrian looked upward, then at her. "This is not the moment to prove something." Emily stopped for half a second. Pain flashed across her face. Then anger. "I already proved it." The words hit harder than he expected. She continued down. Adrian stayed close enough to catch her if she fell. He did not touch her. On the 6th floor, Jonah stopped. He listened. Movement below. Madeline's guard raised his weapon. How many? 2, maybe 3. Adrian looked at the floor numbers. They were trapped between teams. Emily leaned against the wall. Then she noticed a narrow maintenance door beside a pipe access panel. She pointed. "That goes somewhere." Jonah tried the handle. Locked. Adrian said, "Break it." One of Madeline's guards kicked it hard. The door opened into a utility corridor filled with electrical boxes and exposed conduit. They moved inside. Jonah closed the door behind them. For several seconds, only the sound of their breathing filled the space. Emily looked at the rows of service markings, then toward a sign on the far wall. Garage-level access. This way. They moved through the corridor. Adrian looked at her. "You have never been here before." "No." "How do you know where you are going?" Emily pointed at the signs. "They are usually there for a reason." Madeline let out a breath that might have been a laugh. Adrian ignored both of them. At the end of the corridor, they found another stairwell. This one opened into the lower garage. Madeline's security team moved first, then Jonah. Adrian brought Emily through behind him. 3 black sedans waited across the concrete level. One engine was running, Madeline pointed. The middle one. They crossed quickly. A shot cracked from the far ramp. One of Madeline's guards stumbled. Adrian turned and fired toward the muzzle flash. Jonah dragged the wounded man behind a concrete pillar. Madeline crouched beside him. "Can you move?" The guard pressed a hand to his shoulder. "Yes, then move. No panic, no screaming." Emily saw immediately why the Sterling family had lasted as long as it had. Madeline did not need a gun to command a room. They piled into the vehicles. Adrian forced Emily into the rear seat beside him. Jonah drove. Madeline and her wounded guard took the second car. The third peeled away in the opposite direction to draw attention. The garage gate opened. Rain hit the windshield. Jonah accelerated into downtown traffic. For 2 blocks, nobody spoke. Emily watched the side mirror. Her chest rose and fell too quickly. Adrian noticed. "Are you hurt?" "No, Emily." I said no. Her hand moved to her stomach. Adrian's attention dropped. "What? Nothing." He stared. She looked at him. She moved. Adrian went still. "The baby?" Emily nodded. She does that when I am stressed. His eyes remained on her hand. Emily noticed. For one brief moment, the violence around them disappeared. Then a sedan turned onto the street behind them. Emily looked in the mirror. Dark blue, no front plate, 3 car lengths back. She straightened. That car. Jonah checked the mirror. I see it. Adrian turned slightly. Lose him. Emily said no. Both men looked at her. She kept watching the sedan. Do not lose him. Adrian's voice sharpened. Why, I know the driver. Jonah looked again. The sedan moved closer. Emily leaned toward the rear window. The driver's face appeared beneath the glow of a traffic light. Short hair, heavy jaw, scar near the left temple. Her expression changed. Lucas Mercer. Adrian's eyes narrowed. The same name from Bennett's recovery order. Jonah said, He wants us to know he is there. Adrian looked at the vehicle. Lucas made no attempt to hide, no aggressive move, no weapon visible. Then he flashed his headlights twice. Jonah said, Signal. Adrian answered, Keep going. Lucas flashed them again, then turned sharply onto an industrial road. Jonah glanced at Adrian. Adrian looked at Emily. She said, Follow him. You trust him, no. Then why? Because if he wanted me dead, he had 3 clean chances already. Adrian considered that, then nodded. Follow. The industrial road led toward a series of old warehouses near the river. Lucas stopped beside an abandoned loading yard. No other vehicles, no visible movement. Jonah parked 30 feet away. Adrian said, Stay here. Emily opened her door. He looked at her. No. She stared back. You are getting predictable. Emily, if he came to talk about me, I am listening. Adrian did not have time to argue. They got out together. Cold rain blew across the empty yard. Lucas stood near his sedan with both hands visible. No gun. Adrian approached. Jonah stayed 3 steps behind. Emily remained slightly to Adrian's right. Lucas looked at her first. His expression tightened. You made it, Emily said barely. Adrian's voice was flat. You were ordered to kill her. Lucas looked at him. I was ordered to recover stolen property. Emily laughed once. I assume I was the property. Lucas did not deny it. Adrian took another step. Careful. Lucas looked at him. Bennett told us she stole $6 million in financial data and planned to sell it to Kane's rivals. Emily said Kane was the one holding me. I know that now. Adrian's gaze hardened. How Lucas pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. He placed it on the hood of his car. Because Bennett changed the orders yesterday, Adrian did not touch it. Jonah picked it up. Lucas continued. First order said recovery. Second said elimination if recovery failed. Emily's face remained still. Lucas looked at her bruises. I asked why. Adrian said, And he told me you had gone unstable. Adrian almost smiled. Lucas continued. He said Emily was manipulating you, that she was working with Kane, that she planned to destroy the organization. Emily asked, You believed him? At first. She looked away. Lucas added, Then I saw you at the airport. Emily looked back. You ran. I was not there to shoot you. Your crew followed me, to confirm where you went. Adrian stepped closer. You followed the mother of my child through an airport under Bennett's order. Lucas met his eyes. And I am standing here telling you Bennett is moving faster than you think. That stopped Adrian. Jonah lowered the paper. What does that mean? Lucas looked at all of them. The Sterling event is no longer the target date. Emily's expression changed. When Lucas took a breath. 48 hours. The rain seemed suddenly louder. Adrian said nothing. Lucas continued. Bennett knows Emily reached you. He assumes she copied enough to expose him. Jonah asked what happens in 48 hours. Everything. Specific. Kane's people hit Vale operations. Bennett locks down internal communications. Several captains disappear. Then Bennett takes control before anyone has time to organize. Adrian's eyes cooled. And me, Lucas looked at him. You do not survive the first night. Emily's hand moved to her stomach again. Adrian saw it. Lucas noticed too. There is more. Adrian's voice dropped. Say it. Kane added something to the release package. Emily looked at him. What? Lucas hesitated. Personal files. Adrian did not react. Lucas continued. Old police reports, photos, witness statements. Anything that can be tied to your name. Adrian said, we already know. No. Lucas looked at Emily. He built a public package, too. Her expression tightened. Public how press, social media accounts, reporters, crime sites, anyone who will run it before checking what is real. Jonah cursed quietly. Adrian said why Emily answered before Lucas could. Because he does not just want Adrian dead. Everyone looked at her. She stared at the rain on the pavement. He wants his name poisoned first. Then she looked at Adrian. And now he knows about the baby. Adrian went still. Emily's voice became quieter. He wants her born into it. Lucas said nothing. He did not need to. Adrian's face changed. Not rage. Something colder. Something final. Emily looked at him. Do not make promises. He met her eyes. She will not. Emily swallowed. Adrian repeated it. She will not carry this. He turned to Lucas. Why help us? Lucas looked toward the empty warehouses. My daughter is 9. Adrian said nothing. Lucas continued. I have done things I am not proud of. I have followed orders I should have questioned. He looked at Emily. But I am not putting a pregnant woman in the ground because Bennett wants a cleaner succession. Emily studied him. Why did you follow me at the airport to see if you were really pregnant? The answer was ugly. Honest. She accepted it. Lucas looked at Adrian. You have one advantage. What Bennett thinks you are moving north. Jonah frowned. Why? I told him. Adrian stared at Lucas. Lucas continued. I said Emily was trying to get to Wisconsin. Said you were taking her toward Milwaukee. Jonah said, he believed you, he wanted to. Adrian looked toward the road, then back at Lucas. How long can you maintain it? Lucas shook his head. Not long. Adrian nodded. That is enough. They left the industrial yard 20 minutes later. Lucas did not come with them. That was deliberate. His usefulness depended on Bennett believing he was still inside. Adrian relocated everyone to a property near Lake Zurich. Not a Vale house, not technically. It had once belonged to Jonah's uncle. The building sat behind bare trees near the water, far from downtown cameras and familiar routes. By nightfall, the rain had become snow. Inside, the dining table disappeared under printed floor plans, laptops, photographs, and Emily's handwritten diagrams. Madeline joined them by secure video. She had already moved Sterling security away from all publicly known locations. Emily stood over a blank sheet of paper. Adrian watched. She closed her eyes. Then drew. The first floor of Kane's Joliet property, front entry, kitchen, service hall, main office, guard post, then the second floor, bedrooms, security rooms, private elevator, then the lower level, storage, medical room, basement corridor, server room. Jonah watched the lines take shape. You remember all this? Emily kept drawing. I needed something to do. Adrian leaned over the table. You said the server controls the release system. It controls the primary trigger. Madeline's voice came through the laptop. Primary Emily looked at the screen. Kane uses redundant backups. Madeline said, Of course he does. Emily pointed to a section of the lower level. This is the room. Jonah studied the drawing. How many access points, too? Security. Usually 4 men on the lower floor. More at night. Adrian said, Usually? Emily nodded. Kane changes personnel when he gets nervous. He is nervous now. Yes. Jonah looked at Adrian. We can still hit it. Emily shook her head. Not like that. Adrian turned. What? If you storm the compound, Kane triggers the release. We take him first. And if he has already changed the reset protocol, Adrian said nothing. Emily looked at the map. We do this quietly. Jonah asked, How quiet? Quiet enough that the server loses outside communication before Kane knows why. Madeline leaned closer to the camera. I can help with that. Everyone looked at her. She continued. Sterling controls routing software used by 2 carriers servicing Kane's legitimate freight companies. If I create a systems incident across their network, his people will see disruptions that look commercial, Jonah said, and his private lines no access. Emily pointed at the service road. There is a fiber junction here. Adrian looked at her. You know that I watched a repair crew replace it last spring. Jonah leaned closer. If we cut that junction, the building loses external network. Emily nodded. But there is a problem. Adrian waited. When outside connection drops, Kane's system assumes attack. Jonah said automatic release. Not immediately. Emily tapped the server room on the map. "There is a manual override window." Adrian asked how long. Emily looked at him. 30 seconds. Silence. Jonah leaned back. 30. "Yes," Madeline said. "That is not a window, that is a mistake." Emily shook her head. "Kane built it for maintenance. His technician showed me once." Adrian asked, "What exactly happens? Network drops. Emergency replication starts. The server gives a manual interruption prompt. If someone inside the room confirms maintenance mode before the countdown ends, replication stops. And if not, the package begins pushing to remote locations." Jonah rubbed a hand over his face. "So we cut the external line, enter the compound, reach a protected server room, access the console, and stop an automatic process in 30 seconds. Emily nodded. Jonah looked at Adrian. That all? Emily almost smiled. Almost. Adrian noticed. It was the first time he had seen anything close to it since O'Hare. For a second he remembered another kitchen, another apartment. Emily laughing because he had burned eggs while trying to prove he could cook. The memory disappeared as quickly as it came. Adrian looked at the map. "We do not cut the line until Emily is inside the lower level." Jonah's eyes moved toward her. "You are taking her." Adrian said no. Emily looked at him. Adrian continued. "She stays here." "No." He did not look at her. "You know the layout. We know the layout now. You have a drawing. That is enough." "It is not." Adrian finally turned. "You are 7 months pregnant." Emily's eyes hardened. "And I was 7 months pregnant this morning. That is not an argument. It is exactly the argument." She placed both hands on the table. "I know where the cameras hesitate. I know which corridor sounds louder when someone walks through it. I know which doors Kane keeps locked even when the building is full." Jonah said nothing. Emily continued. "I know the server interface." Adrian's voice lowered. "No." She stared at him. There it was again. That single word. The word he had used at the airport. The word that had defined their relationship whenever fear entered the room. "No. Do not go. Do not ask. Do not decide. Do not choose." Emily stepped back from the table. Adrian saw the change in her face. He knew immediately. She spoke quietly. "You did this 8 months ago." His jaw tightened. "That was different." "No, it was. You were afraid Kane could use me, so you decided what my life should look like." Adrian glanced toward Jonah and the laptop. Emily did not care. "You never asked me. You never told me. You made the choice hurt me badly enough to make sure I would stay away, then called it protection." Adrian said nothing. Snow moved beyond the windows. Emily continued. "And where did that protection put me?" The question landed in the room. Nobody answered. She looked directly at him. Behind a locked door in Silas Kane's basement. Adrian's face tightened. Emily's voice softened. "I am not asking you to stop being afraid." He looked at her. "I am asking you to stop turning your fear into my prison." For several seconds, Adrian did not move. Then he looked down at the map. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. "If you go, you stay with Jonah." Emily blinked. Adrian continued. "You wear armor. Fine. You leave the second the situation changes. I decide when it changes." His eyes lifted. She stared back. Adrian almost argued, then stopped himself. "Fine." Jonah looked between them. Madeline remained silent on the screen. Emily nodded. "Good." Adrian looked at the floor plan again. "Show me the service entrance." They planned until after midnight. Madeline created a false routing failure across 2 freight systems. Lucas sent Bennett a message claiming Adrian had been spotted near Kenosha. Jonah selected 6 men whose loyalty had survived every internal review. No one else was told. At 2 in the morning, Emily went outside. Snow covered the edge of the lake. The cold air hurt her lungs. She welcomed it. Inside the house, everyone was making decisions. Routes, weapons, timing. She needed 1 minute where no one spoke to her. The door opened behind her. Adrian. Of course. He stepped outside without a coat. Emily did not turn. "You are going to freeze. I will survive." That confidence has always been irritating. He stood beside her. Not too close. For a while, neither spoke. Then Adrian said, "You should hate me." Emily looked across the dark water. "Sometimes I do." He accepted that. She continued. "Sometimes I remember you making coffee at 3 in the morning because I could not sleep." Adrian looked at her. Sometimes I remember you ending 3 years in 15 minutes. He looked away. Emily touched her stomach. That is the problem. What people are not one thing. Adrian said nothing. She looked at him. Kane wants everything simple, loyal or disloyal, useful or useless, afraid or obedient. Adrian held her gaze. And me you used to. The answer was quiet. He understood it anyway. Emily looked toward the house. I'm going inside tomorrow. I know. I need you to trust me. Adrian's eyes lowered to her stomach. I trust you. No. She stepped closer. You trust what I know. He looked at her again. That is not the same thing. Adrian stood in the cold for several seconds, then said, You are right. Emily had expected resistance. The admission unsettled her more. Adrian continued, I do not know how to do this. Do what lets someone I care about walk toward danger when I can stop them. Emily's expression changed. He had said it plainly. Care about. No strategy wrapped around it. No excuse. She said, Then do not stop me. Adrian nodded, slowly. Your choice. Emily looked at him for a long moment, then went back inside. The next night, Kane's compound outside Joliet stood dark against a frozen landscape. The property looked less like a fortress than Emily remembered. That was what made it dangerous. Stone walls, warm windows, a long private drive. Several warehouse structures beyond the main house, a place designed to look expensive, quiet, civilized. Emily sat in the rear of a dark SUV wearing body armor beneath a heavy coat. Jonah checked his watch. Madeline's voice came through the earpiece. Freight disruption is live. Jonah looked at Adrian. Movement. A man in the forward observation position answered. 2 vehicles leaving East Gate. Adrian said, Wait. Emily stared at the house. Her hands were cold, not from weather. She recognized one upstairs window. The room she had slept in for months. Another window below. Kane's study. For one instant she could feel the gun against her stomach again. Adrian noticed her breathing. Emily. She looked at him. You do not have to be fine. The words surprised her. Not because they were profound. Because he finally seemed to understand she had never needed him to tell her she was strong. She needed permission to be afraid without being treated as weak. Emily nodded once. I know. Jonah said we move. The team entered through the service side. Emily led them to the utility corridor. One camera turned slowly. She raised a hand. They stopped. It moved past. 8 seconds, she whispered. They crossed. A guard approached near the kitchen. Jonah intercepted him before he could raise an alarm. They moved downstairs. Every step pulled another memory out of Emily. The narrow hall, the smell of cleaning chemicals, a dent in the wall near the basement door. She had made that dent with her shoulder during the first week. Adrian saw her look at it. He said nothing. Good. The server room was 30 feet ahead. Jonah touched his earpiece. Fiber team ready. Emily whispered, Not yet. They moved closer. A keypad glowed beside the server door. Emily entered the old code. Red light. Denied. Her stomach dropped. Kane changed it. Jonah looked down the hall. Can you bypass Emily? Studied the panel. Yes. How long I do not know. Adrian said do it. Emily removed the cover. Her fingers found the maintenance contacts. A faint sound came from the corridor behind them. Footsteps. Jonah raised his weapon. Emily worked faster. The panel clicked. Green. Door open. They entered. Rows of server cabinets hummed beneath blue status lights. Emily stared at the console. The room was almost exactly as she remembered. Almost. Jonah touched his earpiece. Cut external. The lights flickered. The console changed. A red window appeared. Emergency replication initialized. A timer began. 0:30. Emily moved to the keyboard. 0:27. The interface looked different. Her chest tightened. No. Adrian stood beside her. What? He changed the menu. 0:23. Emily searched. System. Replication. Maintenance. Nothing. 0:19. Jonah watched the door. Movement outside. 0:17. Emily clicked another menu. Wrong. 0:14. A gunshot sounded in the corridor. Adrian did not move from her side. Emily. I know. 0:11. She saw a small icon in the corner, not labeled, a symbol she remembered from Kane's technician. She clicked it. Manual control opened. 008. Password required. Emily froze. Adrian looked at the timer. 006. Emily. She could hear Kane's voice, a conversation months earlier. His technician had complained that Kane changed passwords constantly. Kane had replied that only one date mattered enough to remember, the day his brother died. Emily had seen it once in an old financial record. A memorial payment, June 14th, she typed 6 digits. 003, access denied. Her heart stopped. Wrong year. Adrian said nothing. 002. Emily changed the final 2 digits, pressed enter. Access granted. Her finger hit the maintenance command. The timer stopped. 001. Silence. For 1 second, no one in the room breathed. Then Jonah laughed once. Pure disbelief. Emily stepped back from the console. Her hands began shaking. Adrian saw. He reached toward her, stopped. Emily looked at his hand, then took it herself. Just for a second. The server room lights stayed steady. No transmission, no replication, no release. Jonah said, "We have it." Adrian looked at the screen, then at Emily. "You did it." She swallowed. "We did." A phone started ringing. Not Adrian's. A black desk phone mounted beside the console. Emily stared at it. She knew that line, Kane's internal system. It rang again. Adrian picked it up. Vale. A familiar voice answered. Smooth, calm, Silas Kane. You always did have a talent for entering rooms that do not belong to you. Adrian looked at Emily. Kane continued. And Emily always was smarter than you gave her credit for. Adrian's face hardened. Where are you? Kane laughed softly, still asking questions after the important part is over. Adrian looked toward the corridor. What important part? Kane paused. Then said, You really should have checked who left the building before you celebrated. The line went dead. Adrian kept the receiver against his ear for 1 second longer. Then he lowered it. Emily watched his face. What did he mean? Adrian looked toward Jonah. Someone left before we arrived. Jonah was already moving. He touched his earpiece. Check every exterior camera. Vehicles, service roads, anything that moved in the last 20 minutes. A voice answered through the comm. Copy. Emily turned back to the server. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. If Kane left, there should be a login trail. Adrian looked at her. Can you find it? I can try. Jonah stepped into the corridor and spoke to the men securing the lower floor. Clear every room. Nobody leaves. Adrian stayed beside Emily. The server interface was still open. Rows of access records appeared across the screen. Emily scanned them. Administrator, security, maintenance, replication. Then one line caught her attention. She leaned closer. There. Adrian followed her finger. A data export had begun 19 minutes before external communications were cut. Not a network transfer. Local copy. Emily's stomach tightened. Someone copied the archive onto a physical device. Adrian's voice went cold. How much, all of it? She clicked another log. The user authorization appeared. Bennett Ross. Silence. Adrian stared at the name, not because he needed confirmation anymore, because some part of him had still been waiting for a reason not to believe it. Jonah came back into the room. What Emily turned the monitor toward him. Bennett copied the server before we got here. Jonah swore under his breath. Adrian looked at the timestamp. 19 minutes. He knew we were coming, Jonah said. No. Emily shook her head. He knew something was wrong. That is different. Adrian looked at her. She continued. If he knew we were coming, he would have shut everything down. He copied what he could and ran. Jonah touched his earpiece again. Any vehicle movement? A man answered. One SUV left the north service gate 22 minutes ago. Plate obscured. Direction west first, then camera lost it. Emily looked at Adrian. Kane, maybe. Jonah shook his head. Or Bennett. Adrian picked up the internal phone again. Dial tone. He pressed Kane's private extension. No answer. Emily watched him. You are thinking about going after Kane. Yes. You still need him alive. Adrian looked at the server. Not for the dead man system. For answers. He met her eyes. Emily was right. That irritated him. It also kept him alive. Jonah spoke. Upper floor clear. Kane is not here. Adrian nodded once. Then we take the house. For the next 30 minutes, Adrian's men moved room by room. Weapons were collected. Personnel were restrained. Hard drives were removed. Phones were bagged. Files photographed. Emily stayed at the server, pulling everything that had not been wiped. The compound that had once felt endless to her now seemed strangely small. She walked past the basement corridor where Kane had kept her. The room at the end still had the same door, same narrow opening, same metal lock. She stopped. Adrian noticed. He said nothing. Emily reached out and touched the door. Cold steel. For a moment she was back inside. No window, no clock. No idea whether it was morning or night. Then Adrian's voice came quietly from behind her. "You do not have to go in." Emily looked at the handle. "I know." She opened the door anyway. The room was empty. One mattress, one chair, concrete walls. Nothing else. Adrian stood at the threshold. Emily stepped inside. She did not stay long. 10 seconds, maybe 15. Then she turned and walked back out. Adrian moved aside. She looked at him. Kane wanted that room to be the last place I remembered myself. Adrian's jaw tightened. Emily closed the door. "It is not." They walked away. A voice came through Jonah's comm. "Boss, we have a vehicle." Adrian stopped. "We're rail yard south of the property." Sterling Tracking picked up a company SUV registered to one of Kane's subsidiaries. Madeline's voice joined the channel. "It entered the freight terminal 9 minutes ago." Adrian looked at Jonah. "How far 12 minutes?" Emily said Kane. Adrian looked at her. "You are sure no." Then she added, "But Bennett would not choose a place connected directly to Kane if he was trying to disappear." Adrian understood. "Kane thinks he still has control." Emily nodded. "Bennett is the one running." Adrian looked toward Jonah. "Take 4 men." Emily stepped forward. "I am coming. No." Her expression changed. Adrian caught himself. He exhaled. Then said, "You just disabled the system. You are exhausted. That is different." "Yes." He looked at her carefully. "And I am asking you to stay here because this part does not require you." Emily held his gaze. Not an order, a reason, a choice. She looked toward the server room, then nodded. "Fine." Adrian almost looked surprised. Emily noticed. "Do not ruin it." He left without answering. The rail terminal was nearly empty. Rows of freight cars sat under weak yellow lights. Snow moved across the tracks. Adrian's vehicles entered without headlights. Jonah pointed toward a warehouse at the far end. One SUV. Adrian got out. No visible guards. No movement. Too quiet. They approached from 2 sides. The warehouse door was open. Inside, a man sat at a metal table beneath a single hanging light. Silas Kane. No coat, no weapon visible. A glass of whiskey in front of him. Adrian entered. Kane smiled. "I was wondering how long." Jonah checked the shadows. Nothing. Adrian stopped 10 feet away. "Where is Bennett?" Kane lifted the glass. "That is your first question. It is the only one that matters." Kane took a drink. "You always were efficient." Adrian's face did not move. "Where is he?" Kane placed the glass down. "You have spent years believing loyalty is something you can buy." Adrian said nothing. Kane continued. "Bennett understood something you never did. What that power belongs to the man who knows where all the bodies are buried." Jonah's hand tightened around his weapon. Adrian did not react. Kane. Silas smiled. "Yes, where is Bennett?" Kane leaned back. "Gone." Adrian took 1 step closer. Kane continued. "He copied your files. My files. Sterling records. Names, accounts, photographs, everything." Adrian's voice stayed calm. "You let him. For a while." "Why? Because I thought he needed me." Kane's smile faded. "That was my mistake." For the first time, Adrian saw something real in Silas Kane's face. Not fear, humiliation. Bennett had played him too. Adrian asked, where would he go? Kane looked toward the warehouse doors. "If I knew, I would not be sitting here." "You expect me to believe that number?" Kane leaned forward. "I expect you to believe you are not the only man Bennett betrayed. Jonah said he worked for you." Kane looked at him. "He worked with me." A small smile returned. Important distinction. Adrian stepped closer until only the table separated them. "What did you promise him?" Kane looked up. "Your chair." Adrian's eyes hardened. And what did he promise you access? To what everything? Kane looked around the empty warehouse. Routes, people, banking, security, the Sterling alliance. Adrian said, you plan to kill me? Yes. There was no shame in the answer. Kane continued. Bennett planned to survive you. And after Kane looked at him, he believed the organization would choose him because there would be nobody else. Adrian almost smiled. You believed he would let you control him. Kane's expression tightened. Yes, and he believed he would kill you when he was done. Kane did not answer. That was enough. Adrian looked at Jonah. Take him. Kane's chair moved sharply. 2 men grabbed him. He did not resist. Instead, he looked at Adrian. You still do not understand. Adrian stopped. Kane continued. Bennett did not spend 7 years beside you for money. Adrian turned. Then why? Kane smiled again. That is the part you should be afraid of. Adrian stared at him. Kane said nothing else. Back at the compound, Emily was still working. Madeline had joined through a secure connection. Several windows were open across Emily's screen. Transfer records, property documents, vehicle registrations. She moved through them fast. Madeline watched. You have done this before. Emily did not look up. Not exactly. I meant thinking under pressure. Emily paused, then continued typing. Yes. Madeline was quiet for a moment, then said Adrian underestimated you. Emily gave a tired laugh. He was not the only one. Madeline looked at her through the screen. Did you love him? Emily stopped typing. The question was too direct. She looked up. Yes. Madeline nodded once. Do you still? Emily looked back at the data. I do not know what that means anymore. Madeline accepted the answer. Then a new record appeared. Emily frowned. What is this? Madeline leaned closer. Emily opened a transportation invoice connected to a private marina north of Chicago. Waukegan. The invoice was old, 6 months old. It referenced storage fees for a vessel owned through a shell company. Emily's breathing changed. She remembered a conversation, Kane's study, Bennett standing near the window. She had been outside the room with a stack of financial reports. The door was open. Bennett had said, If Chicago ever burns, I leave by water. Kane had laughed. Canada Bennett answered, Wherever I need. Emily stood so quickly the chair moved backward. Madeline looked at her. What? Emily grabbed her phone. Waukegan, why Bennett has a boat. Madeline began searching immediately. Emily called Adrian. He answered on the first ring. What? Waukegan Harbor. Adrian heard the urgency. Why, I heard Bennett mention it once. He said if Chicago ever burned, he would leave by water. Adrian looked toward Jonah. How certain. Emily closed her eyes. She saw the room again, the doorway, Kane's glass, Bennett's coat, his voice. Certain. Adrian ended the call. Jonah was already moving. They left Kane with 2 armed men and drove north. Snow covered the highway. Adrian stared through the windshield. Jonah glanced at him. Kane said something bothered you. Adrian did not answer. What? Adrian looked toward the dark road. He said Bennett was not in it for money. Jonah frowned. 6 million says otherwise? 6 million is not enough to explain 7 years. Jonah said nothing. Adrian continued. He had access to more than that. That does not mean he wanted it. No. Adrian looked at the city lights disappearing behind them. That is the problem. At Waukegan Harbor, dawn had not yet arrived. The lake was black. Wind pushed snow across the docks. A private vessel sat near the far pier. Its engine was running. Jonah stopped the SUV. There. Adrian got out. 2 figures stood near the boat. One was Bennett Ross. The other was a woman. Dark coat, hair pulled back, hands inside her pockets. No visible weapon. Adrian approached. Bennett turned. For the first time in 7 years, there was no pretense between them. No office, no title, no shared table. Just 2 men standing on a frozen dock with everything stripped away. Bennett looked tired. You came fast. Adrian stopped 20 feet away. Give me the drive. The woman beside Bennett stepped forward. Mr. Vale. Adrian looked at her. She pulled out credentials. Special Agent Rebecca Shaw, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Jonah's weapon came up slightly. Rebecca looked at him. I would keep that lowered. Adrian ignored her. He looked at Bennett. "What is this?" Bennett said nothing. Rebecca answered. "Mr. Ross has worked as a confidential source for the Bureau for approximately 12 years. The wind moved between them. Adrian stared at Bennett. 12 years. 5 years before Bennett entered his organization. Adrian almost laughed. "But nothing about it was funny. You were federal." Bennett shook his head. "No." Rebecca said he was not an agent. Adrian looked at her. "You put him inside my organization," Rebecca replied. "He already had criminal access when contact began." Adrian's voice became colder. "And you let him stay. He provided intelligence, on me, on multiple organizations." Adrian looked at Bennett. 7 years. Every conversation rearranged itself in his memory. Every question Bennett had asked. Every meeting, every problem he had solved, every piece of advice. Adrian said, "Was I an assignment?" Bennett looked at him. At first. The answer cut deeper than Adrian expected. He took one step closer, and after Bennett's face tightened. "After things changed. Explain." Rebecca stepped forward. Bennett exceeded the limits of his agreement. Adrian looked at her. "What does that mean?" "It means he was authorized to provide information. He was not authorized to participate in assassination planning, criminal succession, or violence against Emily Carter." Bennett looked at Rebecca. "Do not pretend you cared how the information came." Her expression hardened. "I cared when you started building your own organization." Adrian looked between them. The picture became clearer. Bennett had not been working for Kane. Not really. He had not been working for the FBI either. Not anymore. He had used both. Rebecca for protection, Kane for money and force, Adrian for access and legitimacy. Adrian said, "You were going to replace me." Bennett looked at him. "Yes." Jonah stared at the man he had worked beside for years. "Why?" Bennett laughed softly. "Because I was already doing half of it." Adrian said nothing. Bennett continued. "You walked into rooms and everyone looked at you. I handled the people who hated you, the money that disappeared, the captains who needed pressure, the politicians who needed reassurance." His voice sharpened. "You built the name. I kept it breathing." Adrian watched him. "And that made it yours." Bennett looked toward the boat. "For years I thought if you disappeared everything would collapse." He looked back. "Then I realized it would not." Adrian's face remained still. "It would choose someone. You." "Yes." "Rebecca said you planned multiple murders to prove a theory." Bennett looked at her. "You wanted Adrian Vale. I wanted evidence. You wanted results, not bodies." For the first time, anger broke through Rebecca's professional calm. "You stopped being a source when you started manufacturing crimes to create your own future." Bennett looked away. Adrian stepped closer. "Emily." Bennett's jaw tightened. Adrian repeated her name. "You ordered my men to kill her. I ordered recovery. And when she escaped, Bennett did not answer." Adrian's voice lowered. "You signed the order." Bennett looked at him. "Yes." Jonah's hand tightened around his weapon. Adrian did not move. "Why?" "Because she had the files. She was pregnant. I did not know at first." "And when you did," Bennett looked away. That silence told Adrian everything. For years, Adrian had believed betrayal would make him furious. Instead, he felt empty. The rage had burned away somewhere between O'Hare and this dock. What remained was worse. Grief. Not for Bennett. For the man Adrian had believed Bennett was. Adrian asked quietly, "Was any of it real?" Bennett looked at him. 7 years passed between them in silence. Late nights, hospital rooms, funerals, victories, losses. Bennett had been there for all of it. Finally he said, "Enough of it." Adrian closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them. The drive. Bennett reached slowly into his coat. Jonah raised his weapon. Rebecca said, "Easy." Bennett pulled out a small encrypted drive. He held it between 2 fingers. Everything Kane had collected, everything Bennett had stolen, everything that could still destroy people who had no idea their names were inside. Bennett looked at Adrian. "You kill me, you prove I was right about you." Adrian's expression did not change. "I am not going to kill you." Bennett seemed genuinely surprised. Adrian continued, "That is probably worse for you." He extended his hand. Bennett looked at the drive, then at Rebecca, then at Adrian. Finally, he placed it on the dock between them, not in Adrian's hand, on the wood. He pushed it forward with his shoe. Jonah picked it up. Rebecca moved immediately. She placed Bennett in handcuffs. He did not resist. As she turned him toward the car, Bennett looked back. Adrian. Adrian said nothing. Bennett continued. You think walking away from this makes you different? Adrian looked at him. No. The answer stopped Bennett. Adrian continued. I think not becoming you does. Rebecca led Bennett away. The lake moved against the pilings. Jonah stood beside Adrian. Neither spoke for a while. Then Jonah held up the drive. We have it. Adrian looked at the small device. A piece of plastic no larger than his thumb. 7 years of betrayal inside it. Not yet. Jonah frowned. What Adrian looked toward the horizon. Emily decides what happens to the evidence connected to her. Jonah studied him, then nodded. When Adrian returned to the compound, morning light was beginning to fill the windows. Emily sat at the table with both hands around a cup of tea. She looked exhausted. Adrian entered. She stood immediately. Bennett alive. Her eyes searched his face. We're federal custody. Emily frowned. Adrian placed the encrypted drive on the table. He was an FBI informant. She stared at him. For how long? 12 years. Emily slowly sat back down. Adrian remained standing. She asked, did they know? Not about Kane. Not about the kill order. He stopped working inside their rules a long time ago. Emily looked at the drive. So he was using everyone. Yes. She looked up. Even you. Adrian held her gaze. Yes, there was no defensiveness left in the answer. Emily reached toward the drive, then stopped before touching it. What about Kane captured? Dead no. Something changed in her expression. Relief. Not because she cared whether Kane lived. Because Adrian had not made the decision she feared he would make. Adrian sat across from her. The server is secure. Bennett's copy is here. Kane has nothing left to trade. Emily looked down. For 7 months, Silas Kane had seemed untouchable, a man protected by locks, gun secrets, and the certainty that everyone else was more afraid than he was. Now his power sat on a table between them, small enough to fit in a hand. Emily whispered, "It is over." Adrian looked at her. No. She met his eyes. He spoke quietly. "You are safe from Kane." Emily understood the difference. Safety was not the same thing as being whole. The room fell silent. Then Adrian placed the drive closer to her. "What happens to this is not my decision alone." Emily stared at him. "You're asking me, yes." She looked at the man sitting across from her. The same man who had ended their relationship without asking whether she wanted to be protected. The same man who had tried to order her out of danger. The same man who had slowly, painfully begun to understand that care without choice could become another form of control. Emily rested her hand over the drive. "Then we give them Kane." Adrian nodded. "And Bennett?" "Yes." She looked at him. "And anything in there that protects people who had nothing to do with either of them." Adrian held her gaze. "What about the files connected to me?" Emily was silent for several seconds. Then she said, "Those do not disappear just because I love you." Adrian did not react to the word, but Emily realized she had said it. Present tense. Neither of them looked away. Finally, Adrian said, "I know." Outside, sirens approached the property. Not enemies this time. Federal vehicles, investigators. The world Adrian had spent years keeping outside his doors was finally coming in. Emily looked toward the windows. Adrian looked at the server, then at the woman sitting across from him. For the first time, he did not reach for control. He reached for the truth. And for Adrian Vale, the truth came with a price. Federal vehicles filled the drive outside Silas Kane's compound before sunrise. Black SUVs, unmarked sedans, men and women in dark coats moving through the snow with evidence bags and cameras. For years, Adrian had built his life around keeping people like them outside. Outside his businesses, outside his accounts, outside his homes, outside the rooms where important decisions were made. Now he stood beside Emily and watched them walk through an open door. Special Agent Rebecca Shaw arrived 40 minutes later. She had changed coats, but not expressions. Bennett Ross was already in federal custody. Silas Kane had been transferred separately. Rebecca entered the server room with 2 technical agents and stopped when she saw the archive. You preserved everything, Emily answered. Everything Kane did not erase. Rebecca looked at Adrian, and the physical copy. Jonah placed the encrypted drive on the table. Rebecca reached for it. Adrian put one hand over it first. She looked at him. This contains information belonging to Emily. Rebecca's expression remained controlled. It also contains evidence in an active federal investigation. I understand. Then move your hand. Adrian did not. Emily watched him. Rebecca's eyes hardened. Mr. Vale. Emily stepped closer. Adrian. He looked at her. She nodded. It is okay. Adrian removed his hand. Rebecca took the drive. Emily said, There are files on that server that involve people who had nothing to do with Kane's organization. Rebecca looked at her. We will determine relevance, and files related to Adrian. Rebecca's attention shifted. Emily continued, I am not asking you to destroy them. Adrian looked at her. She did not look away. Rebecca asked, What are you asking for context? The agent studied her. Emily continued. Kane mixed verified evidence with altered documents and incomplete records. He designed the package to destroy people before anyone could tell the difference. Rebecca nodded slightly. We already suspected that. Emily looked toward Adrian. He does not get protection from the truth just because he helped me. Adrian said nothing. Rebecca watched him. You agree? Yes. The answer surprised Jonah. It surprised Rebecca more. Adrian continued. If the evidence is real, deal with it. Emily studied his face. No negotiation, no threat. No quiet promise that people would disappear before subpoenas arrived. Just acceptance. Rebecca said, That could cost you. Adrian looked around Kane's server room. It already has. The next several days passed without violence. Adrian almost did not know what to do with them. He spent hours with attorneys, more hours with accountants, then with people who had once believed his name meant no one could touch him. That belief ended quickly. The recovered archive contained enough to destroy Kane's remaining network. Bribery, fraud, extortion, illegal shipping operations, hidden property, payments to officials, communications linking Kane to multiple violent crimes. Bennett's files were worse in a different way. They showed planning, patience, years of careful positioning inside Adrian's organization. He had recorded conversations, mapped loyalties, tracked weaknesses, built private accounts, collected enough information to pressure both criminals and federal investigators. Bennett had tried to become indispensable to everyone. Instead, he had created evidence against himself. Adrian's attorney, Michael Grant, placed a thick folder on the conference table. This is the part you are not going to like. Adrian sat across from him. Jonah stood near the window. Emily was not there. Adrian had insisted on that. Not because he wanted to hide anything, because she had already spent too many hours inside rooms filled with men deciding what danger meant for her. Grant opened the folder. Kane had authentic records connected to several Vale operations. I know. Some are old. Adrian waited. Old does not mean harmless. How bad Grant looked at him. Bad enough that you have choices. None of them are comfortable. Adrian leaned back. Go on. Federal prosecutors want cooperation against Kane's remaining structure. They also want financial concessions. How much? Several businesses. Jonah looked over. Grant continued. Warehouses, distribution contracts, 2 real estate holdings tied to questionable financing. You would also surrender control of 3 operating companies. Adrian's face remained still. Grant watched him carefully. And you would shut down every operation connected to cash movement that cannot survive a legitimate audit. Jonah exhaled. That is almost half the organization. Grant nodded. Adrian asked prison, not off the table. Jonah looked at Adrian. Grant continued. But based on what we have, cooperation could keep the focus on financial penalties and restructuring rather than charges that require incarceration. Adrian sat in silence. For years, men had died protecting pieces of what Grant was describing. Roots, properties, accounts, territory, reputation. Adrian had once believed losing them would mean losing himself. He looked at the folder. How long do I have? Grant answered. Not long. Adrian closed it. Accept the framework. Jonah turned. Adrian. Adrian looked at him. Jonah lowered his voice. You do not have to decide today? Yes, I do. Grant frowned. You understand what you are agreeing to? I understand enough. Jonah stepped closer. We can fight parts of it. We will fight what is false. Adrian's voice stayed calm. We will not fight facts because I do not like what they cost. Neither man spoke. Adrian stood. Start shutting down anything that cannot survive daylight. Jonah stared at him. For years, Adrian had used that exact word as an insult. Daylight. The place where their business could not exist. Now he was asking for it. Jonah asked, You are sure Adrian looked through the windows at Chicago below? No. Then he turned. Do it anyway. Emily learned about the agreement that evening. She was staying in a private medical apartment under temporary protection. The place was quiet, smaller than Adrian's properties, warmer. There were books on the shelves, a bowl of fruit on the kitchen counter, a knitted blanket someone from the clinic had left on the sofa. It looked lived in. Adrian noticed how much easier Emily seemed to breathe there. She sat near the window while he told her what he had agreed to surrender. When he finished, she stared at him. How much enough? That is not a number. Several companies, properties, accounts. Emily frowned. And the organization smaller. How much smaller? Adrian looked at her. Much. Emily was quiet. Then she asked, why? He almost answered immediately. Because of you. Because of the baby. Because I nearly lost both of you. But he stopped. Those answers would have made his choice her burden. So he told the truth, because some of it should have ended a long time ago. Emily studied him. You are not doing this, so I forgive you, no. Or so I think you changed, no. You understand I did not ask you to give up anything, yes? She looked down at her hands, then back at him. Good. That was all. But Adrian felt something inside him loosen. 2 days later, Madeline Sterling came to see him. She chose his office, not because the engagement still mattered, because endings deserved proper rooms too. Adrian stood as she entered. Madeline removed her coat and handed it to no one. She placed it over the back of a chair herself. That alone told Adrian the meeting would not take long. My father wants to sue you. Adrian nodded. He should. He also wants to make sure every person in Chicago knows you broke an agreement with the Sterling family. He can do that too. Madeline looked at him. You are making this irritatingly difficult. I am trying. She sat. Adrian remained standing. Madeline looked around the office. I spent 9 months preparing to marry you. Adrian said nothing. I met your attorneys, your accountants, your security people. I learned which charities your mother supports and which politicians pretend not to know you. She looked up. I learned how to stand beside a man I did not love and make it look convincing. Adrian sat across from her. I am sorry. Madeline's expression changed slightly. Not softened, changed. For leaving me at the airport, for treating your life like another term in a contract. She considered that, then nodded once. That is a better apology. Adrian almost smiled. Madeline continued. Our engagement is over. Yes, my father will cancel the logistics agreement. I expected that. He may reconsider parts of it later. Adrian frowned. Why? Because money survives embarrassment. That time Adrian did smile. Barely. Madeline saw it. She stood. At the door she stopped. For what it is worth, I never hated Emily. Adrian looked at her. I know. No, you did not. She turned. You assumed this was about possession because that is how men like you understand relationships. Adrian accepted the criticism. Madeline continued. I was angry because you made a decision that affected my future without allowing me into the room. The words sounded familiar. Too familiar. Adrian looked toward the window. Madeline noticed. Yes. She almost smiled. I imagine you have heard that recently. Adrian looked back at her. More than once. Good. She opened the door, then paused. I hope the child gets her mother's judgment. Adrian answered. So do I. Madeline left. No kiss, no dramatic goodbye, no promise to remain friends, just a door closing on a future neither of them had truly wanted. 3 days later, Adrian sat in a clinic waiting room and discovered there were places where power meant nothing. He could call judges, move money across states, make men cross a city in 20 minutes because he asked. But he could not make a doctor open a door faster. He sat with his hands clasped. Jonah had offered to wait with him. Adrian refused. This was not business. Finally, the door opened. Dr. Hart stepped into the hallway. Emily said, "You can come in." Adrian stood immediately. The examination room was dim. Emily lay back with one hand beneath her head. A monitor beside her showed shapes Adrian did not understand. Dr. Hart adjusted the equipment. Then sound filled the room. Fast, steady, a heartbeat. Adrian stopped. He had heard gunfire without blinking. He had stood beside dying men. He had listened to his own pulse while waiting for people to decide whether they would kill him. Nothing had ever sounded like this. "Dr. Hart said she is doing very well." Adrian looked at Emily. Emily gave him a tired look. "I already told you. I know." He looked back at the screen. The heartbeat continued. He whispered, "She is strong." Dr. Hart smiled. "She is active," Emily said. "That is the polite way to say she kicks me all night." Adrian looked at her stomach. For a second he seemed almost uncertain. Emily noticed. "You can ask." His eyes lifted. "Ask what you want to know if you can touch." Adrian did not answer. Emily took his hand and placed it against the side of her stomach. Nothing happened. He waited. Then a small movement pressed against his palm. Adrian froze. Emily watched his face. The baby moved again. He swallowed. Dr. Hart quietly looked away. Adrian whispered, "Does she have a name?" Emily was silent. Then she said, "Sophie." He repeated it. "Sophie." Emily nodded. "Sophie Carter." Adrian looked at her. The old version of him might have reacted. His name, his daughter, his blood, his right. Instead, Adrian looked down at where his hand rested. "Okay." Emily stared at him. He noticed. "What you did not argue. It is your name. She is your daughter too." "Yes." Adrian removed his hand gently. "That does not mean I get to take choices from you." Emily looked away before he could see too much. After the appointment, she asked him to walk with her. They went slowly through a small courtyard behind the clinic. Snow had begun melting around the edges of the stone path. Emily wore a long, dark coat. Adrian kept his hands in his pockets. She said, "I am not moving into your house." "I know. You offered the doctor security for me." "Yes. I will accept some of it." Adrian nodded. "Some one person outside the apartment, one car available if I need it. No one inside unless I ask." "Fine." Emily looked at him. "I want my own place." "Fine. My own money." "Yes, I am going back to work eventually." Adrian glanced at her. "Accounting, maybe. You hate accounting. I hate criminal accounting." He almost smiled. Emily continued, "I want every medical decision to be mine unless I cannot make it." "Yes, and I decide who has access to Sophie." Adrian's steps slowed. Emily stopped too. This was the hardest one. They both knew it. She looked at him. "I am not saying you cannot see her." Adrian said nothing. "I am saying saving me does not automatically make you someone I trust with her." His jaw tightened. Not with anger, pain. Emily saw it. She did not soften the truth. "You do not get me back because you rescued me." "I know. You do not get forgiveness because Bennett betrayed you." "I know. You do not get to decide that we are suddenly a family." That one hurt. Adrian looked away. For several seconds, the only sound was water dripping from melting snow. Then he looked at her again. "I know." Emily studied him. "Then what do you want?" The answer came quietly. "A chance to know my daughter." Nothing more. Emily had prepared herself for pressure, for promises, for Adrian to tell her how much he had sacrificed. Instead, he stood in the cold and asked for a chance. She nodded. "We start there." Adrian breathed out slowly. "Okay." They continued walking. Near the end of the courtyard, Emily stopped. "There is something else." Adrian waited. "I need to know why." He understood immediately. 8 months. One conversation. 15 minutes that had changed everything. Adrian looked toward a bare tree near the wall. "Kane had started asking questions about you. You told me that. I did not tell you everything." Emily waited. "The first time I heard your name connected to Kane, I thought it was random." He looked at her. "Then 2 of his people started asking where you worked, where you lived, whether you came to my properties." Emily's face tightened. "The Sterling proposal arrived the same week." "Yes," Adrian continued. I thought if I ended things publicly, if I made it believable, you would stop being useful." Emily looked down. "So you made me believe I meant nothing." "Yes. You could have told me, I know. You could have moved me somewhere safe." "Yes. You could have asked what I wanted." "Yes." Her eyes lifted. "But you did not." "No." Adrian held her gaze. "I thought protecting someone meant removing the danger without making them carry the fear." Emily's voice was quiet. "And instead you made the decision for me." "Yes." "You broke my heart to save my life." "Yes." "And I still ended up in Kane's house." Adrian looked down. "Yes." Emily took a breath. "That is what you need to understand." He looked at her. Not that the plan failed. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. "That you never gave me the choice." Adrian nodded. "I understand now." Emily watched him carefully, then said, "Good." Not forgiveness, not yet. But the word did not sound like a door closing. The weeks that followed were quieter than either of them expected. Kane remained in custody. Bennett faced federal charges and investigations that stretched far beyond Chicago. Several Vale captains disappeared from the city. Others accepted the new reality. The organization shrank. Some businesses were sold, some were closed. Others were rebuilt under legitimate management. Jonah complained constantly about paperwork. Adrian discovered that legal accountants asked more questions than criminals. Emily found an apartment in Lincoln Park. Not one Adrian owned, she made sure of that. It was on the third floor of a brick building near a tree-lined street. 2 bedrooms, 1 small balcony, a kitchen with old cabinets. Emily loved it immediately. Adrian offered to replace everything. She said no. He stopped offering. That was progress. He visited when invited, sometimes twice in 1 week, sometimes not for 10 days. When Emily said she was tired, he left. When she said she had an appointment alone, he did not appear outside the clinic anyway. When she needed groceries during a snowstorm, he brought them. He did not send a man. He came himself. One evening, Emily opened the apartment door and found Adrian standing in the hallway with a large cardboard box. She looked at it. "What is that A crib? I already ordered one. This is the one you ordered." Emily frowned. "How do you have it?" "It was downstairs." "You carried it up 3 floors. The elevator is broken." She stared at him. "You have 6 men within 2 blocks." "Yes." "And you carried it." "Yes." Emily stepped aside. That was stupid. Adrian entered. Probably. 2 hours later, the crib was still not finished. Emily stood in the bedroom doorway with one hand on her stomach. Adrian sat on the floor, surrounded by screws, wooden panels, and instructions. She tried not to laugh. He looked up. "Say it." Emily pressed her lips together. "I did not say anything." "You are thinking loudly. You built an empire." Adrian held up 2 screws. "These are identical." Emily laughed. A real laugh. Warm, unexpected. It filled the small room. Adrian stopped moving. Emily noticed him staring. Her laughter faded. "What nothing?" She looked at him. Adrian returned his attention to the instructions. But both of them knew it had not been nothing. Later that evening, Emily stood in the kitchen pouring water. The crib was finally assembled, mostly correctly. Adrian made coffee. It was nearly 10. "You do not need coffee," Emily said. "I know. You are going home after this. I know." She looked at him. "You say that a lot now. What I know." Adrian considered it. "I was wrong about many things." Emily almost smiled. That might be the most expensive sentence Adrian Vale has ever spoken. He looked at her. Then Emily froze. The glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Adrian became alert immediately. "What?" She put the glass down. He moved closer. "Emily." Her hand went to her stomach. Then her expression softened. Adrian stopped. The baby, Emily nodded. She looked at him. "Come here." He approached slowly. She took his hand, placed it against her stomach. They waited. Nothing. Adrian looked at her. Emily whispered, "Give her a second." Then Sophie kicked. Hard. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. Emily smiled. Another kick. He looked down at his hand. Strong. She has been fighting since before she was born. Adrian looked at Emily. So has her mother. The room became quiet. No armed guards stood inside. No phones were ringing. No one was asking Adrian for orders. There were no negotiations. No enemies, no billion-dollar agreements. Just a small kitchen, a half-finished cup of coffee, a woman he had once pushed away, a daughter he had almost lost before knowing she existed. Emily watched him. Adrian did not move his hand. Neither did she. He asked quietly, "Can I come Thursday?" Emily knew what he meant. The next appointment. She could have answered immediately. Instead, she let the question exist for a moment. Adrian waited. That mattered too. Finally, Emily said yes. Something changed in his face, small enough that another person might have missed it. Emily did not. "Thursday," Adrian said. 10:30. I will be there. She looked at him. 10:30 means 10:30. I understand. No convoy. One car, no men in the waiting room, one outside. Emily considered it. Fine. Adrian nodded. Outside the windows, Chicago moved beneath the winter night. Cars passed. Apartment lights turned on and off. Somewhere far away, men were still arguing over territory Adrian once believed he could never surrender. He had lost businesses, money, influence, a marriage alliance, a man he had once trusted like a brother. The empire he controlled was smaller than it had been a month earlier. But standing in Emily Carter's kitchen with his hand against the place where his daughter had just kicked Adrian did not feel smaller. He looked at Emily. She was not his again. Maybe she never would be in the way she once had been. She had offered no promise, no forgiveness, no easy ending. Only Thursday. Only one appointment, 1 hour, one chance to arrive when he said he would. Once Adrian would have considered that almost nothing. Now he understood how much it was. For most of his life, power had meant never having to wait for permission. Trust was different. Trust could not be taken. It could not be bought. It could not be protected into existence. Someone had to place it in your hands. And when they did, you had to prove you knew how not to crush it. Sophie kicked again beneath his palm. Emily looked down, then back at him. Neither spoke. Adrian did not try to control what the moment meant. He did not ask whether she still loved him. He did not ask whether there would be another chance after Thursday. He simply stayed there until Emily moved her hand away. Then he finished his coffee, put the cup in the sink. And when Emily said she was tired, Adrian picked up his coat and went home.